Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are in place and time. We are very happy to welcome all of you again. We have with us one of my dearest friend, Heena Thapar. She's joining us all the way from Bangalore, India. She's currently working as a PYP educator, and she's here with us to talk about essentials of a writing workshop in a PYP classroom. We learn about language, we learn through language, and Hina is going to walk us through some of the philosophies and practices of Ruth Kulham's model. You must have heard about 6+1 writing traits, and she is a practicing, PYP educator. I would love to hear more about Hina's work from Hina. A very warm welcome to you, Hina, again. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Asna. It's always been a pleasure to be part of your community that I see keeps growing every time. And thank you so much once again. And I would like to go ahead and begin my work with the essentials of writing. Okay, essentials for a writing workshop. So we do keep talking about writing, why writing is important, why do our kids need to write? And I also feel that writing is not something that you can just tell the child, okay, we are here, today we are going to write, and one day it's done. No, it is a continuous process. There is a lot of scaffolding that's required when you're getting your children to do a writing workshop. And every writing workshop has its own processes, its own strategies that you need to keep going on side by side to create lifelong writers. And writing can begin as early as in grade one. And some steps of it may be in your prep too, but yes, in grade one, definitely we can begin with our writing workshops. So, as you can see here, a successful writing program requires a daily block of time. So, even in my current school, my co is really a brilliant teacher who is doing writing workshop in a wonderful manner. And from her I've learned this, that yes, writing requires, like, where we have to work every day, slowly scaffolding each and every part of it. We cannot just expect our children that we tell them, okay, today we are going to write a non-fiction book, and you give them a cutout of a book and okay, start writing. No, it has to be done in a very slow manner, with allocated time for explicit instruction on selected aspects of writing. Time for students to write independently. This is very important. We need to give time to our students to write independently, to explore their thoughts, to think as broad as they can, and opportunities for students to receive and provide feedback. When I'm talking about over here, receive and provide feedback, receive feedback, of course, we as teachers do give feedback to our students on their writing. And provide feedback, we also want our students, like what we do in our school here is that we keep the students, they work in pairs, they work in team, and they also provide feedback to each other, which is very helpful for them. And of course, one thing that's very essential with the feedback is feed forward. How do you help your students to develop to the next level, or to go to the next level when they are writing? Okay, so here are some kinds of text forms that we can help our students to write. So there are some texts, like the text where we are talking about the purpose is to describe something. So the examples of these text forms are like report writing, menu, glossary. To entertain, the text can be poem, fairy tale, and then to explain, it can be a memo or journal. To inquire can be interview, survey. To instruct, they can be directions. It can be a recipe when we are telling our children. I think mostly recipe writing we start doing from grade one. We start our writing to instruct, and we usually do recipe writing. Writing to persuade, to recount, and to socialize. Socialize can be done in the higher grade levels, maybe in grade 3, 4, and beyond that. Okay, so there are something very, very important points that we, as a teacher, we need to keep in mind before we begin our writers workshop. Before beginning with the students, some essentials for the teachers. The first one is make a rubric for every text form. This is very, very essential. So before you feel that, okay, I think for my next unit, maybe you're going to do writing to entertain, yeah? So, and your text form is maybe poem. But what are your criteria? What are your criteria? On what basis are you going to help the student to grow, to write in a better manner? So for that, a rubric is very, very important. For every text form, you need to create your separate rubrics. Encourage students to be independent in their thoughts. So, usually what as teachers we do, we always try to, we give them a feedback, but for the feed forward, we also sometimes pour in our thoughts in their mind that what are they supposed to write? Not how, but what are they supposed to write? So we are not supposed, as a teacher, I will say that instead of telling them what are they supposed to write, let them explore it on their own. We can give them ideas, but we cannot put thoughts in their mind. They need to explore on their own. Maybe they read books, maybe we read stories to them, we show them different kinds of poems if we are doing a poem writing. So this is how we give them ideas, but we will not pour our thoughts in their brains. Scaffold the rubric with the children step by step. So whatever rubric, I'm going to talk about rubrics also, how you can help create a rubric for the writing. I will talk about it. And for every step of your rubric, you need to scaffold it with the children. Suppose your first part of your rubric is suppose ideas. So you need to tell them when you're talking about ideas, what do you think should be the ideas in their rubrics? When you're talking about, suppose, how they need to organize their writing, what should be the title of their poem or what should be the title of their book, even for that you need to have a scaffolding. Every day you need to scaffold one part of your rubric with your children to make them understand better, to make them strong writers. To enhance the writing of the learners, provide meaningful feedback and feed forward. Feed forward is very, very important because suppose if we see that, I'll talk about suppose grade 1. If I'm seeing that my child, my student is not writing, beginning the sentences with capital letters, I'm not going to cancel it and write the capital letters. No, I am going to help the child in the feed forward by telling him what he needs to do on the next page or what he or she needs to do on the in the new book that they're going to write. That is the feed forward. And always avoid canceling and writing something for them. Let them think about it. Maybe you can, like what we do currently, and of course it is again thanks to my who's from whom I've learned a lot about writing essentials. Like always, whatever points you feel that, oh, maybe this is something where they can improve, you can write a sticky note for them on their writing book, so that whenever they are writing the new page or the next book, they can refer to the old one and see what is the next step where they need to improve or where they can be better. Okay, here comes the crucial part, designing the rubrics. So, there are different ways of designing the rubrics. So, when you're designing the rubric, these can be your criterias for designing the rubrics. It can be the text structure. How do you want the text to be? The sentence structure, the spelling, the vocabulary, and the punctuation. And let me tell you that for every grade and for every text or writing form that we are going to talk about, your rubrics are going to be different. We cannot create one rubric and say, okay, I'm done for the year. No. For every writing form, like for every text form that your students or your learners are going to write, you need to have separate rubric for them, because the way they're going to express themselves and the way you want them to be strong writers is different for every text form. So when we talk about the text structure, some example that I can give you an example about the text structure. Suppose if I'm talking about grade 2. So what are the things that I think we should include in the text structure? So the things that we can include in the text structure can be, does the writing, the text form include a title? Because title is very, very important for whatever kind of writing they are doing, whether it is persuasive writing, whether it is instructional writing. A title is very, very important. Whether the events are written in an order. Suppose if they are writing a story, are they writing the events in an order? Such as, have they written what happened first, what happened then, what happened eventually, what happened next, and then at the last, finally, what happened? So, this is for writing a story. Have they shown evidence of being able to write in the past tense and using simple details to enhance their writing? So, when we talk about simple details to enhance their writing, I will explain this more when we talk about the 6+1 writing traits. When we go to the sentence structure, so here we are talking about stories for grade 2. And when we are talking about the sentence structure over here, so there should be an evidence showing in the writing that the student is writing grammatically correct sentences. They are writing simple sentences and attempting to write compound sentences. And at least 4 to 6 sentences are written, including compound sentences. And all the sentences are complete thought. It's not that if a child is writing a sentence and says, there was a cat, and then what? If there was a cat, then what? So they need to give a complete thought. In grade 2, we can expect them to give a more detail to their writing. When we are talking about spellings, this is again, I'm talking in context of grade 2. We can see that their spellings are correct. Are they using high frequency words? Are they using some technical words, some interesting words when they're doing their writing? Are they using most letter sound knowledge to write the words of one or more syllables? And are they showing the knowledge of prefix and suffix? So, when you're talking about spellings, it also depends how much level are your students based on, which of course you get to know when they enter the class in the new year with some prior knowledge assessments, right? Vocabulary. So when we are talking about vocabulary, we can use some grammar that we will be teaching, we will be inquiring into side by side while we are doing our text with the children. Like suppose we have inquired into common and proper nouns and even pronouns. So we can talk about that as well. We can even see whether the child or the students are including the common and proper nouns in their writing. Are they including pronouns? Because this is something you will be working on side by side when they're doing the different texts. Are they using adjectives to expand their sentences? Which I think is very, very essential, because adjectives is something we begin in grade 1, and by grade 2, they should be strong in using adjectives. Include verbs to enhance their writing. And of course, when we talk about punctuations, capital letters, full stop, spacing between words, and the sentence starting with capital letters, the before capital letters, I meant the proper nouns. They have question marks, they understand where they have to put the exclamation marks, no capital letters in between the words, because a lot of times we see that children just start using capital letters anywhere, but that cannot be done. We have to be very, very specific about this thing, that how our students are going to do their writing. So when I'm talking about all, suppose this is the kind of rubric you want to create. So when I'm talking about the text structure, and I spoke about 4 things in the text structure. I spoke about writing includes a title. I spoke about events are written in order using time vocabulary such as finally, eventually, first, last, then, showed evidence of being able to write in the past tense, and uses simple details to enhance their writing. So, as a teacher, in every class, I am going to just introduce one strand of my text structure. So, if today I'm going to introduce how we are going to write stories, what is a story, what kind of stories do we need to write, the first thing, if I'm going to talk today about, is my text structure, then I will just talk about two things. Maybe I'll just talk about your writing includes a title. Events are written in an order, which is very, very important in your story. First, finally, eventually, next, then. This is very, very important. But I will only do only two things in a day. And then just give our students a chance to explore this kind of writing. How are they going to attempt this? And one more very, very essential thing, whenever we are doing our writers workshop with our children, and whenever you're introducing your rubrics, any strand of your rubric with your children, always remember to introduce it with a story. I know it is a bit of a work for a teacher to first look for a story which exactly has the same thing what we are looking focusing on, the same strand, but I think it is very essential because when we read a story and when we show our children the example, it is very, very easier for them to write it in their own words when they are making their own stories. Even if I'm talking about poems, if we are introducing different kinds of poems to our children, I think it is very, very important for them to understand what is a poem, what kind of poem are they going to talk about today. So if you give them an example, if you show them an example, if you write, maybe you write the first, after showing an example or reading out a poem to them, you write the first poem with them as a class, it makes it so easier for them to then write it on their own. I know, like for grade one and two, sometimes we as teachers focus more on the spellings and focus that, oh, this is not right, the punctuation is not right, but that's okay. I feel the more we need to focus on is exploring on their ideas. That is very, very essential. How can they explore themselves? How can we as teachers help them to explore more about whatever text form we are introducing in the class? That is very, very essential. Don't think that, if today, oh, today I've introduced this, I've introduced a poem today, maybe tomorrow I cannot do it. No, why not? Maybe you can introduce a similar kind of poem the next day as well, which gives them another idea and another more to explore about the poems. Okay, let's go ahead. And similarly, if I'm talking about the sentence structure, if in my rubric I'm going to focus on whether the sentences are grammatically correct, they are writing simple sentences, they are writing compound sentences, I will just not give them the rubric. Again, I will scaffold this as well with my children, step by step. That is very, very essential for our students, for us and for our students to work step by step, especially for a writer's workshop where we want them to put in a lot of effort to give us a good writing piece. So one, if I'm talking about sentence structure and if I'm talking about whether the sentences are grammatically correct, what was my expectation from my children? What do I expect them to write? What do they think they should write in order to be grammatically correct? This is so we have to discuss it with them. So the rubric has to be like a success criteria where everything is being discussed. It is like an open page, an open book for our students, where they know what we expect from them, and they know that what how they have to write, which level they have to achieve. That is very essential. Even when we are talking about write simple sentences, what kind of sentences do we want them to write? What kind of complex compound sentences do we want them to write? So everything has to be done with them one at a time. Even if you're talking about punctuations. So what are punctuations? Maybe they know a full stop, maybe they know a question mark. But how do they need to write different kinds of sentences? That is something where you need to work with them on. So we cannot just tell them that, okay, your punctuation should be right. No, but how do you want them to the punctuations to be right? Again, maybe read a book to them, read a poem to them. How is the punctuation put in a poem? How is the punctuation put in a book if suppose they are doing non-fiction books? That is very, very essential. Okay, I'll go to my next slide. And I'll be very, very happy to have questions at the end of this, whatever questions you have. Okay, so in my current school, we are following 6+1 Traits of Writing. This is a book by Ruth Culham, and it is an amazing book. And in my current school, we are following this, and our rubrics are also made following the 6+1 Traits of Writing. So the 6+1 traits that we are focusing on over here are the ideas, the ideas that the child is going to come up with in the beginning of their writing. How are they going to explore? How are they going to expand their ideas? The organization, the voice, the word choice, sentence fluency, conventions, and presentation. So I will be going ahead and sharing one example with you today about 6+1 text about writing a non-fiction book. How do you explore a non-fiction book? How do you scaffold the rubric of a non-fiction book with your children? So if I'm talking about ideas, so my first thing will be whether the students can come up with a simple, clear idea. So by a simple, clear idea, I mean whether they can come up with on what do they have to write a book on. Suppose, for example, one of my students chose to write a book on dinosaurs. Very good. But can you expand? Can you expand on that? What are the different contents you're going to write about the dinosaurs? So that is also very, very essential. How are you going to expand that? Does my student Can my student expand that idea? Can they give 3 to 4 points to write the contents? So for example, can the student, if they're talking about dinosaurs, they can talk about their body, they can talk about when they existed. They can talk about the different kind of dinosaurs, and they can talk about the food that they eat. They can talk about the place where they lived. So these are 3 4 criteria, just an example what they can talk about. So their idea is about a dinosaur, but how are they expanding their ideas? So when I am talking about my ideas, this is again, I will do this in 2 classes with them. The first time, we are going to come up with simple, clear ideas where we are going to explore different ideas where the children are going to work in think, pair, share, or they're going to share, like talk with their friends. And then as a class, we come up with some ideas, we list them down, and then that chart goes straight on the wall where they can refer to the different ideas they want to write about every time they're writing a new book. And then maybe my second session will be with them, how do they expand their ideas? So when they're expanding their ideas, that is what I said. Whether are they, what are the different contents that they're going to write in the book? That will be my second session with them. Not on the same day. Maybe after 2 days, maybe after like another day, the next day, the following day. So this is what I'm going to do every day. One step of my rubric, I'm going to scaffold with them. When I talk about organization, so again, organization is something similar to what we had over here when we were talking about the text structure. That is similar to organization, where we are going to focus on the title. Does my book have a title? Children can just write dinosaurs, but how creative can the student be with their titles? Maybe we need to sit with them and talk about it. If dinosaurs is a very easy title, let's explore about dinosaurs. Let's learn about dinosaurs. So maybe some examples for this as well we can give to our students. Then how does my student, again in organization, how does my student organize the book? We have to talk to them about what are the different things that your non-fiction book requires. What are the things that a book requires? So we talk about the contents of the book, right? Then we talk about that, does my book have an introduction? Am I writing 2 to 3 lines about the introduction of the book? Then, does my book have headings? My book has pictures, it has labels. So, all these points that I'm telling you, every time I will just talk about one thing. And for every time that I'm going to talk about my organization of the book, I'm going to read a book for every strand that I'm going to talk about in my rubric. That is very, very essential. And I can tell you that Oxford Reading Tree and Epic, they are wonderful. And also, there is the website that is very, very uh, good, that I'll say and I always refer to, is going to be Epic, because they have different kinds of book. You can also choose for reading the books whether it is non-fiction, fiction. You can also choose from that. So Epic, I will say, is very, very good. And okay, so let's go ahead. So when we are talking about books, so, how are they organizing their writing? What contents do they have in their book? That is the first part we are going to discuss. If you're talking about headings, I will look for a book that has different headings on each page. That is also going to be very, very helpful for the students. So, the more they see, the more visuals they have, the more they listen to things, the more they can absorb what they need to do. What do we expect them to do? When I talk about the trait, the trait of word choice, over here I am going to focus on whether my students or my learners are here, the word choice. We are going to focus on what interesting words my children can use. What is going to be there, how interesting and how catchy can they make their book when they're writing a book. So right now my example is only about book, writing a non-fiction book. How can they do that about a word choice? So for this, it's, their children, whether it's any age group from grade 1 to grade 5, they cannot just get ideas on themselves, they cannot just get words on themselves. So they have to read books. So maybe we can issue books in the class, tell them related to their topic, and tell them, give them, okay, this for dinosaurs, these are the books. Why don't you go and explore them? That will help them in different word choices. And they can just make a list of the words which they feel are interesting, which they feel are technical words, or maybe which they feel are the good words for them, the key words for them, which they can write in their books. So we can obviously go with the books. Then the next thing we can talk about is our sentence fluency. When we are talking about sentence fluency, we are talking about whether we can write different kinds of sentences. That is also something to what I was talking about here, about the punctuation, where whether we can write the different kind of sentences. When I'm talking about different kind of sentences, means my sentences, are they ending with full stop, are they with question marks, are they with exclamations? So these are very, very important things to get the interest of your children, and also to make them understand how different kinds of punctuations are used for writing. It is not only for writing a non-fiction book. Different kind of punctuations can also, different kind of sentences, different kind of punctuation marks at the end of your sentences can also be used when they're writing poems, when they're writing any kind of recount writing. It can be used in that as well. And when I'm also talking about sentence fluency, we over here also focus on how are the different ways in which I can begin my sentences. Because usually children tend to just begin their sentences in just one particular manner. Suppose if they're talking about maybe my school, and they're talking about maybe the library. So the library is a place where I like to go. The library is a place where we get different kinds of books to read. So there, all the sentences are just going to begin with library. So then we have to help our children to understand how they can write different kinds, how they can begin their sentences in different ways. That is very, very essential for them. And this is for any kind of writing that they're going to do. These two are very essential. One, writing different kind of sentences, and second, beginning their sentences in different ways. Then, of course, we have conventions. Conventions are something, again, where we talk about using punctuation, whether I begin my sentences with capital letters, and whether I remember to use, whether I can spell the sight words. Because sometimes, whether even till grade 2, children are unable to spell some of the sight words, which is very, very essential. So, and how do you help the children to explore the sight words? So the best thing to do is to make a word wall in the class. Every time you see a sight word, you feel that my students don't know it, just put it on the wall. And then always they can just keep referring to it on an everyday basis. Then the next point is about presentation. When we are talking about presentation over here, we are talking about two things. One is about the presentation, means how they are writing, how clear is their presentation, how well they can write. Is it clear? Is it easy to read for the reader, whatever kind of writing they are doing? And the second thing is about their illustrations. If they're illustrating for their poems, or if they're illustrating for their non-fiction books, or for their fiction writing, or for their stories. So how good is their presentation? What their illustrations, are they in reference to what they have written, or is just random anything? So that is also very, very important part. If you can, do try and read the book 6 plus 1 Traits of Writing by Ruth Cullum. It is an amazing book. And there is one more book that I have cited while making this presentation. I have written the names at the end, and I will talk about that book as well. So here I have some examples of the combination of the UOI and the text forms that I have been using since a few years. So if you're talking about who we are, we can do a lot of recount writing. We can do a lot of recount writing. And when we talk about recount writing, I will go back over here to my page. So, recount writing, writing autobiography, writing their own diary, writing their own journal. So, when we are referring to who we are, it's usually regarding to ourselves, what is going around us, right? So, we can do diary, we can do a journal with them. And sorry, I have to keep changing the slide so that I can give you the reference again and again. Where we are in place and time, where a lot of times we are referring to how we have come up from the past till now. How are we connected to different places? How have we moved to different places? And usually, a lot of our social studies comes in this. Here we can do writing to instruct, for where we are in place and time. Where over here, writing to instruct can be about experiments, manuals, directions, maybe about maps, when you're talking about maps, about list of things. And when we're talking about how we express ourselves, this is definitely to entertain. Anything you do in how we express ourselves, it will relate to entertain, where we can talk about poems, fairy tales, stories. This can all come in our narrative writing. It can come in our text to entertain. When we talk about how the world works, usually again it's we usually, I think, focus on science when we talk about how the world works. And we are talking about to persuade. How do we persuade? So, to persuade, there are different things over here, but maybe an editorial. They have researched on something, maybe about some, when we are talking about planets, the Earth system, let them be editors. Let them write something about what they have explored about. Let them write something they want to put in the newsletter. So this is how they can explore that. When we talk about how we organize ourselves as a unit, we can talk something about to describe. So it can be about report writing, about menu, description about things, glossaries, and the contents of a page. So of course this all goes to when you're writing a book. So maybe you can write a book when we are talking about how we organize ourselves. Maybe you're doing something related to your community. How do you write about a community, right? And then you can write a book about it, maybe a non-fiction book about it. And you can use any of those strands from there. Sharing the planet. Sharing the planet is one of my favorite UOIs where we can explore about so many things that is going around the world. And of course, it is related to science where we can do, right, the purpose is to inquire, survey, questionnaire, interviews, where they can, suppose if you're doing a UI about related to sea animals, then you can interview a lot of people. What kind of a survey you would like your children to create, and ask the people about it, what kind of questionnaires they would like to create. So this will all come in how the world works. Sorry, sharing the planet, I'm sorry. So this is just an example I'm giving you. Of course you can just change it according to what you feel suits the best for your transdisciplinary theme. And I would like to say, when your child loves to write, only then your student, your learner can become a writer. So we as teachers have to create that interest in them, have to create that environment in the class where every time when we talk about, oh, we are going to have a writer's workshop, and they're totally, totally excited about it. And that can only happen when we are giving them the time for independently doing the work. Of course, we can give them suggestions. Of course, we can give them a feed forward, we can give them a feedback. But as I told you earlier, we are not putting our thoughts into their mind. Let them read books, let them explore on their own. And as teachers, I think it is our job to help them explore, to make them understand how they can explore, to make them develop the love for writing. And developing a love for writing begins from grade one. It is very essential for them. And yesterday only I read an article that said Tonya Gilchrist. I follow her a lot. She does wonderful sessions. So yesterday she had posted an article which said that when the students are doing writing, we do not need to focus on the spellings. We need to focus more on their ideas, how they are exploring, how independently they are thinking. That should be our main focus. Of course, spellings are important, but maybe we need to look for some strategies how we can help the children to decode the words to write, to recognize the syllables when they are writing. So that is how we need to do to create the interest for writing. And the two books that I was talking about that I have referred to is, one is 6 plus 1 Traits of Writing by Ruth Cullum, and the second book is a writing resource book from First Steps, that is written or published by the Department of Education from Western Australia. So this was all about me, about the writers workshop, and I hope I have given you some insights about what you can do and how you can write and how you can make writing interesting for your children. Thank you, and I'm open for any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Heena. It was awesome hearing you, and you shared some very practical ideas to implement the writing process in the
Yes,
classroom. And I have
thank
personally
you.
used 6 plus 1 writing traits, and I know how awesome they are. And yes, it is a go-to place to explore those threads, and it takes time. It is a gradual process, but it makes difference. It makes students better writer, and it develop the joy of writing, so they are
Yes,
no longer in fear. They get excited, And it
Yes,
also gives a common language for assessing, modeling, teaching, giving and receiving and providing feedback. So it's wonderful. And
absolutely.
Elizabeth asked a question, but you have answered it in your last slide. That what are the sources? Because she found your presentation very interesting and useful. So she was inquiring about the sources. So she has
Okay,
used these two books. Can you go back to the previous slide, Hina, so that
sure.
people can put down?
Here.
Okay, so there's a question again from Elizabeth. How would you take a text type through the inquiry cycle?
How would you take a text type through the inquiry cycle? So I think like right now, that is what I was referring to about, right? So even in the text type, we have to follow, like if we follow Cat Murdoch's inquiry cycle, how are you tuning in? How are you sorting out? So when I was talking about the different steps, and the tuning is of course always done through a book. That is what I feel. When you're reading a book, that is what the tuning in is, right? When you're sorting, when you're finding out, when you're sorting out, that is the everyday process that we are doing when we are scaffolding the rubric that we've created. When we are finding out, that is when we are sorry, I was just sorry, I just got little distracted. So when we are finding out, that is what when we are doing, when we are helping our children to find out, when they're researching, when they're working, when we are showing them different kinds of poems, different kinds of writing. So yes, you can definitely go through the inquiry cycle for different kinds of texts, and it is absolutely the teacher's choice how she wants to, or he wants to explore the inquiry cycle. We can do it.
Thanks, Hina. And then people are thanking you.
Thank
Roxana,
you.
she has joined us from Ecuador. She's thanking you. We have some more learning buddies from around the globe. We have Vyom Rastogi. Hi, hello. We have Geraldine. We have
Thank you.
Ramana.
So Elizabeth, like you have asked a question just because there are so many available, but this looks very nice. So usually I refer to these two books when I'm doing my writer's workshop in the school. Of course, the 6+1 traits, I got to know about this when I joined my current school. And from my previous school, we were using the First Steps resource book, and they both have similar things, but they also have something different which you can include when you're making your rubrics. And it really helps the children to explore and get interested in writing. So, with my current school, I can tell you when the day we do not have a writer's workshop, our children are, why we don't have the writer's workshop? So, I think that is how you create the interest for the children. So every day, and the best part is that you scaffold it every day. And just don't give the rubric at the end of your writer's workshop or in the beginning of your writer's workshop that this is what you have to work on. That's not going to help you. That's not going to help your children.
Then we have people thanking you again. Geraldine is saying thank you.
Thank
And I
you.
think Elizabeth could relate with you. So she's sharing an emoticon, and then yeah,
Yes.
what resource can be used for grade six? I think 6+1 writing trait has a version
Yes.
that can be used for senior school
Yes.
as well.
And even this resource book that I was talking about, the first steps, it is not only limited to primary. It has so much to explore that you can also use it for MYP as well. If you want to give them a base, it can be used for the MYP.
And the best part with the 6+1 writing traits, it showcases like with which trait, which books we
Yes,
can use, so that
yes,
makes the entire process so easy. Because when kids can see the exemplars actually, that what does it mean to generate ideas, where to
yes,
get ideas,
absolutely.
and
And
how to.
sorry. And Asna,
Yeah,
with this 6+1 traits book, if you have read that book, I'm sure there are those short, like a poem kind of a thing that they have given with every trait that really creates the interest. And every time you're introducing a trait, you can just read those lines, which makes it very, very clear for the children that okay, this is what we have to do. If you're talking about conventions, what are we doing? If you're talking about ideas, what are we doing? So the short poems that they have put in there, that really builds up about the children how they need to write.
And it also makes the assessment process very easy because they have some corrected sample within the book where we can see like how to give the feedbacks, what are the traits that we can look into. So it's an awesome resource. So if your school is trying to invest in some of the PD resources, go and grab a copy of Curriculum 6 plus 1
Absolutely.
writing. It's going to be an amazing resource for you to gain perspective about writing process. Okay, Elizabeth has one more question. Do you have any suggestions about how teachers should mark the writing? Should they be writing on the final writing piece or stick to the rubric?
So, Elizabeth, for this, I would like to say that we do not stick to the final writing piece. So, as the children are doing their writing, suppose if my child is writing a story, so every day I have currently I have 12 students in my class. So every day I make it a point that I sit with at least two children, and like I was talking to you about earlier, and I have the rubric with me, and where we just keep discussing, okay, what are we doing? Are we progressing on this? Have we progressed on this? And we usually make the stars and wishes with our children. And we put those stars and wishes sticky notes on their book, or whatever book, or whether they have a sheet in which they have written their ideas, so that they can keep referring to them. And I so that is, of course, I'm referring to the rubric. And when I'm making my report card comment, this really helps me because I am referring to my notes that I've put discussed with the children, and I have made my report card comments based on those discussions, those feedbacks, those feeds forward that I have with them. So we do not mark at the last one. We keep it is a continuous process. Like like assessments are continuous, right? This is not something that we will just assess them at the end.
Yes, formative feedbacks work wonder. When they are ongoing, when they are in the process of writing, if we give them feedback, and obviously in the final, as culmination, whatever you found that they worked well and what
Yes.
they have progressed well with, we can write in the final comments, as Hina said.
Yes.
And yeah, people are saying nice presentation, as Sheikh found it amazing with a lot of great insights. Yes, I agree with you, Sheikh.
Thank you.
It was amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great having Hina back with us, and she will join us again with
Yes.
something very interesting and something very problematic as well. And I think I should spill the beans. She is going to talk in the future presentation about report writing, hopefully, and we would
Yes.
have her back. Meanwhile, I would just want to show a token of appreciation from our end, which we always do. Allow me, Hina, to present the
Thank you.
screen.
Thank you so much, Asna. It's always a pleasure coming here and discussing my learning. Thank you,
Thank
Asna.
you.
This is
Thank you so much,
wonderful.
Hina. It was lovely having you here. And, listening and learning from a practicing PYP educator is a treat. And you have treated us well on this Sunday, and it was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and the people who
I'm
have joined
glad
us.
I'm glad that this has helped. It's going to help teachers. And
We are
please
delighted.
yes, please start using this. And you can tag me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Heena_teacher. And you can also tag me on Insta, which says Teacher Journey PYP. So you can just tag me whenever you're doing these things. And you can keep following me as well if you wish to.
Glad, yeah. Stay connected. Twitter is a great professional learning network. I use
Yes.
it rarely because I stick to LinkedIn always. So join us on LinkedIn because I'm very active over there. And please
Yes.
fill this form. We would love to give you a token of appreciation from our end. And yes, this is a community where we call speakers among us and they come and share their practical learning ideas. So, if you have any such ideas, please feel free to approach me. And I'm also sharing a way to do that. There is a Google form that I have created, so you can even fill that form and touch base with me. I would love to welcome any one of you as a presenter over here if you have something worth sharing for all of us. And feel free to fill that form if you want to present, and also fill the another form that I have shared just before that to receive the participation certificate. It was lovely having you all with us, and do like, subscribe the channel so that you stay connected. Next time, I think in the next week, we will have a presenter who is a PYP educator and now a published author, and she's going to come here to share her journey as an author and what did she share in the book. And it's a process. She's an amazing PYP educator, and we will meet her next week. Thank you so much, Hina. This is good night here from Bangladesh, and I think it is good night for you as well from
Yes.
India. Bye, everyone. See you
Bye bye,
next week.
everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Asna. Have a
Thank you.
wonderful
Thank you,
week
Hina.
ahead. Bye bye.
Bye.